I think for kids who have a limited diet, meaning typically under 20 foods, is where I start to perk up my ears and say, okay, we need to start getting ahead of this. Because we don't want it to go under 10 foods, under 5 foods. So I'm a dietitian. I specialize in kids on the autism spectrum and help them expand their diet and help them get the nutrients that they need to feel good. And so they can focus well and just do their best in school, therapy, and in life. And my inspiration behind all of this is my brother Barrett, and he's 28 now. And he was diagnosed with autism when he was 2. And so I'm his older sister. And so I've always grown up knowing autism. It's been a huge part of my life since I was very young. And so I was able to see the impact that nutrition, the importance of nutrition for kids on the autism spectrum. My brother was an extremely limited eater. He only ate 5 or 6 different foods growing up. And then my mom really utilized nutrition, and it made a big difference for him. And so I've been able to help teach other parents how to implement nutrition, especially when their children have really limited diets, and how to help them get those nutrients and approach everything in a way that is very sensory friendly and autism friendly. We want to make sure we approach it in the right way.
So if a child, like for example, because some kids have a lot of oral motor sensitivities, they wouldn't eat everything. And now the minerals and the proteins, and we have to put in everything. So it's so difficult, to balance both of them. So how? I mean, do they need supplements then? Or, how do we solve this?
Yeah. So there are 2 things that I see. So one being the extreme sensory aversion or sensory sensitivity. And then I also see kids who have oral motor issues. So they're not able to really chew well. They're not able to use their tongue in a very coordinated way. And I'm not a speech therapist. So I always refer out to speech therapists, being like, I don't need to tell them, but I'm telling the parents, we need to get some kind of evaluation so that we can see, is your child actually chewing well? Is their tongue moving correctly? Which all has to do with speech too. But feeding is super important for this. So if a child can't eat a lot of the protein-rich foods like meat, for example, it's really hard to chew. And so if they can't physically do it, they're not going to, no matter if they're hungry, starving, or whatever situation. And then the other side of things is the sensory experience. And so if a child really can't tolerate the feeling of that texture in their mouth, it's not something that they can usually just override. It's something that they literally cannot experience because they get so overstimulated. So what we have to do, when it comes to the oral motor side, we have to get them in speech. And if it's in the mouth, like oral motor, like discoordination or low muscle tone, it's probably in the rest of the body too. So I say, okay, speech and OT, we got to put those together. If you're not already, we have to get in. And then the other side of things, which is the sensory overstimulation, let's figure out where your child is right now. What sensory experiences can they handle? Which ones do they prefer? And let's start there. So we might not be able to go over to something, let's say they only like crunchy foods right now. We're probably not going to be able to go over to something really chewy because that's not going to fit for them. We have to let's start with crunchy, and let's gradually expand and push them outside of that comfort zone very slightly so that we can grow. And eventually we can get over to these new textures and these new colors and these new tastes. But it does take time, and coming up with more of a strategic plan and meeting the child where they are is going to be a lot more successful than us trying to push these foods on them where we think they should be. We really have to take into their needs in that moment and not what we think. Not what we should be. Yeah.
Got it. And in that transition, when they are moving, and the kind of foods and the number of foods are increasing, but they would get deficient on certain foods. So in that case, they need to meet a dietitian and get those supplements. Is that what you're saying?
I think for kids who have a limited diet, meaning typically under 20 foods, is where I start to perk up my ears and say, okay, we need to start getting ahead of this. Because we don't want it to go under 10 foods, under 5 foods. If a child eats fewer than 20 foods, I think a multivitamin is a really great idea just to cover our bases. The way that I view supplements, I think they're a fantastic tool. I
Mm,
think that they are a really great way to fill in the gaps while we're working on expanding the diet naturally. So
mm,
we can't use multivitamins in place of working on the diet. We can't just stick it in there and say, oh, it's probably fine. What
mm.
I want is for kids to be able to expand their diet to get as much as they can from their food. So there's going to be a lot more variety in the food that
Obviously.
they eat, multivitamin, and it's those nutrients in the food easier for your body to absorb, tons of other benefits too.
The
Fiber.
pharmacy, exactly. And the pharmacy that we have within us, that is going to be far superior than any, pharmaceutical, whatever supplement that we get. But yeah, for the time being, till, they are. So I get it. And as you mentioned, the not just the leaky gut, not just the GFCF, not just the allergies, but even you said you spoke about yeast overgrowth, and you spoke about other things. So what are called prebiotics? What are these probiotics? Do they help in getting all this in balance?
They can. Yeah. So there's a lot of variety from product to product. So at the end of the day, what a prebiotic is like a fiber supplement. So prebiotic will feed the probiotics. So a probiotic is a live bacteria. Most people think of these when we're talking about supplementing for the gut. So we're putting in live bacteria. We want to make sure that we're choosing a really high quality product because your stomach, your gut is meant to protect bacteria from going into it. And it can't tell the difference between a good bacteria and a bad bacteria. It's super acidic. Like
Mm,
it wants to protect us. So we want to
mm,
make sure that we get a high quality probiotic that can make it through that really harsh environment to get into the gut. We also, if a child isn't eating enough fiber, a prebiotic supplement can be a really great tool to help us fill in that fiber gap and help us also feed the good bacteria in the gut so we
mm,
can start building up some of that good bacteria. So we really want to we have trillions of bacteria in our gut. We want to have a good balance of things. And if they're only getting 5 foods and those foods are heavily processed and really high in sugar, we're probably not growing the best kind of bacteria. So by using a supplement like that can help us start to balance it out, even if the diet isn't in a place where it can change drastically tomorrow or next week or next month.
mm,
For kids who have really limited diets, that can
mm,
be really helpful. But it can help with yeast. There are some specific probiotics that specifically help with yeast. There's actually a yeast probiotic. It's made from yeast instead of bacteria. It's called Saccharomyces boulardii. And that is a really great probiotic if a child did have yeast overgrowth because it kind of competes.
mm,
One wants to take over, and so the
mm, mm,
Saccharomyces boulardii is a really great one. In fact, that little boy I was talking with that had head banging with his palm, he's
mm,
been on that for a long time to prevent yeast from coming back, kind of just like a preventative measure for him because he had experienced that it was a very large overgrowth for him.
mm,
But yeah, there are certain supplements, and that would be another reason why I would use supplements. A is to fill in the gaps. B is to target a specific issue short term. So if there's a yeast overgrowth, if there's a bacterial imbalance,
mm,
if there's a parasite,
mm,
anyone
mm,
parasite,
mm,
I think
mm,
a lot of people are like, well, that sounds crazy. I'm like, honestly, a lot more of us probably have them when we realize, and they're
mm,
just not causing major issues. Sounds
mm,
yucky, but I think it's true. Uh,
Sounds really yucky. Yeah.
it's I know yeah. So I think it's one of those things that if you're using the right targeted supplement, they can be an incredibly powerful tool. I think that if we are trying to build this protocol of supplements and just say that that's the right protocol for every child on the autism spectrum, we are really missing the mark. Because again, there's no one size fits all. And I see a lot of people who are spending thousands of dollars a month on these supplements, and they're not even the right fit for them. They're just doing it because they read online that this protocol is right for kids on the spectrum.
Mm-hmm. So these fermented foods basically are probiotics, is it? The fermented foods that we eat, they are
Yeah,
probiotics.
so fermented foods will have, yes, probiotics. And then depending on the fermented food, some of them will have prebiotics as well. So like some fiber. So if you did like some kimchi, for example, you would get also a little bit of fiber. You would get those, probiotics as well.
Mm,
Versus something like yogurt or kefir, you would be getting just the probiotics. You wouldn't be getting the prebiotics from that.
mm,
But yes, fermented foods are a really, really great addition to the diet. What's hard is when kids are really limited in the foods they'll eat, and they're probably not going to be eating
mm,
kimchi or some other fermented
mm,
food besides
mm,
yogurt. But really great addition to the diet.
mm. You just mentioned that, yeah, one size doesn't fit all. So when you work with kids, how do you customize? As in, what exactly do you do when a child, suppose, so I come to you and I'm like, hey, Brittyn, this is what I'm having. So how does it look like, having a consultation with you?
Definitely. So I do not work with clients anymore. The way that I support families is through my membership. But I will share with you when I did see clients how I would do this. And this is how I believe it's, yeah, how I believe it, they're best served.
Mm,
So first thing that I would do, we'd have our initial consult. I would collect everything that I could, everything that they were eating, what supplements were they taking, all of their past medical history. I mean, nothing new, but we're digging really, really deep. Um, we also, around that time, are getting them set up for a few different tests. So one that I really like to do is a stool panel. That's how we figured out that one child had that yeast overgrowth and leaky gut. So there's a stool panel. I don't know how widely accessible it is across the world, but I utilize what's called the GI map. And we're able to look inside the gut and see what's going on in there. And then we can also look at nutrient deficiencies, not in the gut. That has to be a blood panel. So we take a blood panel to look at vitamins and minerals. If we are looking into food sensitivities and the parent wants to do a test to look into that, then that would be the time that we would do that as well. But those are the ones that I start off with as a dietitian. There are a ton of other tests, but I think there's also something to be said about doing 15 different tests at once and then kind of having so much information that you almost get nowhere. Sometimes I think it's better to start with a few and
yeah,
then add on as you go,
yeah.
because it can be really overwhelming as a parent to have just too much information.
So if you're not seeing clients online or offline or whatever, and if you're giving them access to a membership, so it's in a group. So how do you help them? As in, every child, as you mentioned, is different. So how do parents get the value? Like, uh, is it weekly? Is it monthly? How does it happen?
Yeah, so they can join at any time. And inside, it's called the Nourishing Autism Collective. And so inside of the membership, there is a community and they can post in it at any time. I'm in there answering questions, as are another dietitian. And then I also have a community coordinator who helps connect parents, because it's also a social place where you can get connected with other parents too, which is
Mm,
really special.
mm,
But I'm answering their nutrition questions, kind of pointing them in the right direction. I have a step-by-step approach that we utilize for picky eaters. I also utilize it for making sure they're getting the important basics. Like we talked about the importance of protein and
mm,
fat and fiber in their diet, and how can we utilize the foods they're already eating to try and build a meal that's going to be highly satiating, but also get them as much nutrition as possible, even if they only eat a few foods. I teach them the importance of supplements, the importance of lab testing, and then I host monthly Q&As and workshops in order to facilitate that. Now, if somebody needs that one-on-one support, I do refer them out. We have a bank of, referrals that I'll send somebody to as well. But I really utilize this as a place to help families make those kind of connections, or people who haven't been ready to get started and are feeling really overwhelmed by it and are just like, I don't know where to go. This is a great place to get started, get connected, get a plan in place, and then feel confident heading into your doctor's appointment, your dietitian's appointment, talking with your speech therapist about what you would like to see. So there's a lot of different resources that we give. It's just a little bit of a different way of doing it.
Hmm. So do you also have, I mean, those whatever multivitamins and all, as in, do you have some products also that you sell?
I don't have my own brand by any means, but I do have products that I prefer. So actually, inside of my membership, we have what's called the Autism Nutrition Library, and it is this extensive library, and it has different categories. So supplements, foods, nutrients, symptoms, conditions, and within each of those, it's broken down. Okay, if you want a multivitamin, here's what you need to know. Here's what you need to be looking for. And the reason we also have those guidelines is because, I mean, I could share what I like that we have here in the States, but that's not going to be helpful for you because that's not accessible to you. So here's what we're looking for. If you go to the grocery store, what check marks do we need to be making? And, be able to move forward. Because I want to teach people how to do this themselves as well, and how to recognize what's helpful without just, clicking a link too. So I do have my favorites loaded in there. But I use this Autism Nutrition Library as like this internal resource for all of my members, where if their child was experiencing constipation, we actually have an entire guide on what they should be considering for nutrition, supplements, and lifestyle to get started. And then we can dig a little deeper from there.
So it's like they join a community, they meet people, they get access to you where, you kind of give them the answers to their questions, and you also meet them for the frequently asked questions. That's what it is like.
Exactly.
Wonderful. And if they join it, it's like for a month, for a year. How is it?
They can join month to month. There's no fuss
Okay.
cancellation. So if they wanted to cancel after the first month, that's totally fine. But a lot of people join for the nutrition and then stay for the community. So
Yeah.
it's a really special place. You can join annually as well and save 20%, but it totally depends on, what the person's nutrition goals are. And picky eating is one of the things that I'm known for. And so that takes time. So a lot of people choose to join annually because they know that they're in it for the long game.
Mm. And if people want to reach out to you, how can they, what's the best email address, or what's your website? I mean, what's the best way by which they can get a prompt response?
Most people find me on Instagram. And so I have about 80,000 followers on Instagram. And so that's where a lot of people will come into my membership as well. But so if somebody was trying to reach me, that's actually the best place to do it. So I honestly check Instagram almost more than I check my email. So definitely reach out there. I also have a podcast called Nourishing Autism. That's a great place to learn more information about nutrition for autism. I have season 2 coming up, so a lot of new episodes that are going to be coming out with some really amazing guests as well. I am on YouTube, I am on Facebook, I'm on all the places. But yeah, if you had to choose one, Instagram is a good place to reach out, and lots of free information there as well.
Wow. Wow. So, Brittyn, is there something that you feel I've not asked you and I should have asked? Because I think I did cover everything. But
I
is there
know.
something that you feel in your practice that you really talk about and you feel I've just missed it out completely? Is there something like that?
We definitely touched on picky eating, but I think that's one of the biggest things that parents are struggling with, because a lot of the picky eating approaches are not, like the typical picky eating approaches are not created for children who have sensory processing challenges or have sensory overwhelm. So it takes a really specific approach to make sure that we are following, steps that are actually going to help the child be successful and not put them into further sensory overwhelm. And so if a parent here is listening and they're like, I feel like I've been trying everything when it comes to picky eating and I'm just not having any success, it's not you at all. It's usually the approach, and it's just not built for them. So for parents who are feeling like they're in that place, come on over. I'm happy to share, or else I can also point you in the right direction, because there are some amazing feeding therapists out there that utilize very sensory friendly approaches, and it can be really great to get connected with one of them as well. But I think a lot of parents feel super alone in all of this. And it's amazing when you can show up to a place where hundreds of other parents or thousands of other parents are in the same exact boat and are like, come on in, like, you're welcome here, and we get it. Sometimes that's just really helpful.
No, that's very helpful, because sometimes only that realization, oh, it's not just me. Oh, because sometimes when you're struggling, I have a lot of parents whose kids were struggling and their parents are like, no, this never, because they never raised kids who had these difficulties. So there's a lot of judgment. And when they meet another parent, like, oh, you too, so it was not just me who was thinking. It's going to be a big thing for sure.
So
Great.
true. I completely agree with you. I was just chatting yesterday. I interviewed, he's a friend, his name is Rob Gorski, and he runs the Autism Dad on Instagram. And we were talking about this because his sons, he has 3 children on the spectrum, and he got these diagnoses in the early 2000s. He was like, it felt so isolating. And it's really cool now to be able to speak to parents who are just now getting this diagnosis and be like, you're not alone. That's what I felt, and he, has a large following. And so it's really cool to be able to see these parents who are able to meet because of the internet and social media, and finally be able to have some community and realize that it's not just them. And yes, they may feel isolated right now, but they can really find an amazing community of people online too, which is really special. And so that's actually why one reason why I created my membership. And I hired one of my past clients who's a mom who has 2 girls on the spectrum to help facilitate that kind of community and provide opportunities for parents to connect. Because yes, it's a nutrition membership, but I think it can be so much more than that. So she helps me. Honestly, she was already doing it, and now she gets to be a member of my team and do that too. But the community is really important in this whole journey too.
Yeah. Wow, it was really, really, really enlightening talking to you. And I really appreciate every single minute that you gave. And you really spoke, it was not like, okay, come on, let's finish it off. You were really there for me. And for everyone else who's listening, they could feel your energy. I'm so sure. Thank you so much, Brittyn. It is going to really help a lot of families who are listening to you. And even if single one changes and there's an impact, it's worth it. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for hosting this space. I'm very happy to have been able to be here, and hopefully we'll be able to continue to connect with you and your listeners. So definitely come find me over. It's just Autism Dietitian on any social media platform. I'm on YouTube as well. You'll have to teach me your ways. You have amazing videos. So thank you so much for having me here.
Before you go, I wanted to help you to help your child improve faster. Here are 4 things that you can do. 1, you can subscribe to my channel so that whatever tips, strategies, insights, whatever I share, they come to you as notifications into your inbox and you are updated on a weekly basis. 2, you can buy my book, Looking Beyond Labels, Becoming a Mindful Parent. It is available on Amazon. It's a guidebook. It will guide you on really, really, really how to help you to help your child better. 3, I've done a lot of masterclasses which are all available as recordings on my website, khushi.net.in/online-events. You will be able to refer to a lot of courses related to sleep, toilet and potty training, sensory diet, oral motor challenges, emotional wellness, and so many of those. And then number 4 would be, we can meet and I can guide you. We can meet weekly. I meet parents weekly for some of my courses, which you can find on khushi.net.in /events, and we can meet weekly. You get to ask me your questions. I share what to do, how to help, and it's all done in a group setup. It's an amazing deep dive trying to understand your child, and I'm sure it transforms your perspective. It transforms the way you work with your child. And these are the 4 things that I feel would really help you. Thank you.